Hello, book lovers, and thanks for listening. I post new chapters every week. If you like my work, please remember to like and subscribe to help me build my channel. The Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent. Narrated by Jennifer Schafer. Chapter 19. Wren. That tree's been taunting me since yesterday. The tree that shades the earth that covers the remains of Daddy and Imogen. This may be morbid, but I have to know. I have to prove to myself that Mama isn't a liar, and there's only one way to find out. Mama always told me Imogen died before I was born. An accident, she said, never saying a whole lot beyond that because it made her lose her breath and break down into tears every time she thought about it too much. I don't remember Daddy, though he had to have been in my life at some point. I was 1 year old when Sage was born, but it's the strangest thing because I can't put a face to my father no matter how hard I try. I used to lie in bed some nights, fighting through the fog of memories as if I could find him if I looked hard enough, but it never happened. Mama said most people don't remember the earliest years of their childhood, and she always told me not to feel bad if I couldn't picture his face or remember the Woody Guthrie songs he used to sing when he'd entertain us while Mama was cleaning the kitchen after dinner. Mama said he died in the forest just past our property line, that someone with a gun shot him and left him for dead. She never knew why, and she never knew who. All by herself, she dragged him back home and buried him under the tree alongside her firstborn. Sometimes I think I remember that time in our life. Other times I think they're just those false memories Mama always talked about. Images my mind created to illustrate Mama's vivid stories. I'm supposed to be gathering eggs for breakfast, but this morning I've taken a detour to the garden shed in search of a shovel. Rifling through the garden tools, I find a hoe and a watering can and a hand rake, but no shovel. He must have hidden it, thinking we might use it on him. Grabbing the hand rake, I march out of the shed, letting the door bang against the side behind me, and I run to the weeping willow tree, falling to my knees in front of the empty flower bed, surrounded by rocks the size of my head. Plunging the rusted tines into the cold, hard dirt, I rake clumps of rock and clay and soil. I'm barely making progress, but I refuse to stop, even if the cold air burns my lungs and I have to fight just to take a breath. Eventually, I toss the hand rake aside, deeming it useless, and I dig into the earth with my bare hands like an animal, wild and determined. Nothing else matters. The wind kisses my face, blowing my hair into my eyes, and when I brush it away with my forearm, I'm left with a wet mark. I didn't realize I was crying.
What are you doing?
The man's voice sends a shock to my heart, and I freeze.
You burying a bone or something?
He chuckles, and for a moment I think I might be safe, that he's not going to punish me for taking a detour on my way to gather eggs. My father and sister, I say. I wanted to see if they were really buried here. Glancing up at him, I squint against the sun. He lifts his hand to his face, massaging his leathery cheek.
You think your mama lied to you?
He asks. I don't know. That's why I'm digging. I pick up the little rake, bracing myself for the moment he tries to yank it out of my hands. Without saying another word, the man walks away. I don't question it. I don't try to understand it. I only keep digging. A few minutes later, my dress is stained with earth and my nails are caked with muck, and I stop to catch my breath and examine my progress. The odds of me finishing this on my own without the proper tools aren't good, but I need to keep going. Gathering what's left of my strength, I plunge the metal into the dirt again and again, stopping only when a familiar metallic chink in my ear pulls my attention to the right. Our yellow garden shovel stands driven into the ground, the man's meaty fists clenched around the rubber handle.
Thought you could use this.
he says, his kindness equally appreciated and confusing. I'm not sure where he hid it on our property, but that's the least of my concerns. Rising, I clap the dirt off my hands before taking the shovel from him and sinking it into the small hole I've already made. Over and over I shovel heaps of dirt, piling it onto one giant mound. And when I need to stop and take a breath, I collapse on the ground and bury my head in my hands, letting the shovel fall at my side. My body aches, joints throbbing and muscles pulsing. And then I hear the chink of the shovel against rocks and dirt once more. The stranger has taken over for me. He grunts with each dig, saying nothing. I catch my breath, silent and watching. And when he's done, I have my answer. There are no bones buried here. Under the weeping willow, beside the flower bed, there's nothing but dirt. Mama lied. Sage heats scraps of yesterday's goat meat over the fire, and I pray we don't get sick. Why don't you let me take over for a bit? I ask with a prying smile. Sage loves to cook, but I need to do this. It's part of my plan. It's the only way I'm gonna get us out of here. But I like cooking, she says. Sage, I say under my breath, you're not used to cooking goat meat. Let me take it from here. Go and grab a can of green beans from the cellar. Wiping her hands on her apron, she gives me a cockeyed look before asking the stranger if she can go to the cellar. While they're distracted, I lower the pan closer to the fire. I need the smell of burnt meat. I need smoke. I need a reason to have to open the window above the sink. My sister runs off to the cellar and the stranger rifles through his bag. I've been paying closer attention lately to the things he keeps in there, and ever so often I watch him fill his empty canteens and jars with well water and pack 'em in his bag, the bag he needs in order to survive the forest. Sage returns just as the meat over the fire begins to blacken and shrivel. My gaze moves from her to the stranger to the pan over the fire. A moment later, the meat begins to sizzle and pop, and it doesn't take long before the cabin is filled with haze. Ren! My sister runs towards the fire. You're burning it! I throw my hands in the air, shrieking, and run to the kitchen window, throwing open the sash and sliding the lower half up while the stranger gets the other windows. Sage fans the smoke away, and while the two of them are preoccupied, I swipe a fingerful of goat's milk butter I'd intentionally left out and grease the window. A little trick I learned from this Bony Legs book Mama used to read us. Tonight, when we leave, he won't be able to hear the creak of the window as we slide up the frame. I'm so sorry, I say when the chaos settles. I wasn't paying attention. The stranger huffs, shaking his head the way Mama does when Evie leaves her dominoes out, or Sage forgets to clean up her puzzles. Sage keeps a close watch on the meat this time, and I take the jar of green beans and begin preparing them, keeping the man's portion separate. Grabbing 3 tin plates from the shelf, I divvy up the cold beans. Quick heating over the flame should warm 'em enough, and I take good care to ensure his portion is sprinkled with the melatonin and valerian root I prepared earlier. I'd crushed 'em so fine the resultant powders were almost invisible, and with salt and pepper, they should be almost tasteless. Watching the two of them from the corner of my eye, I ensure no one's the wiser, and I get started. If he finds out what I did, he'll kill us both. I'm sure of it. After dinner, the man grabs a book from his bag, some stubby paperback with huge letters on the front, and he rocks in a chair by the fire while we clean up. Pulling a slate and a piece of white chalk from between 2 dishes where I'd hidden it earlier, I write my sister a silent note. We're leaving tonight, after he falls asleep. Sage's eyes grow wide, and for a second she looks like she's about to say something, but she stops herself, knowing better than to make a sound. And this is exactly why I waited until 0 hour to tell her any of this. Had I told her earlier, she'd have slipped up or acted unusual all day, and he'd have been on to us. I couldn't risk it, not when our lives depend on it. Swiping my hand across the slate, I erase the message and write another one. Dress in layers under your nightshirt. Don't make it obvious. I erase that one and scribble a new one. Whatever you do, don't make a sound. Don't question me, and just do what I say. I run a wet rag across the chalkboard, removing all hints of words left behind, and I slide it behind the sink, out of sight, returning to the dishes as if we'd never stopped. By the time we're finished, the man has stopped rocking in the chair long enough to release an audible yawn. My breath halts as I observe him from the corner of my eye, watching as he creases the corner of his page and closes his book. A second later, he rises, stretching his arms over his head, and then he heads outside to relieve himself. Any time he needs to go number one, he steps outside the front door and walks around to the back of the house, as if taking a quick jaunt to the outhouse is too risky for him. When the stranger returns, he shoves Mama's bed into place, blocking the door once more, and shrugs out of his flannel shirt.
Tomorrow we leave.
He says, words slow and heavy.
First thing, I suggest you two get some sleep. We've got a lot of miles to cover.
Heading to the wardrobe, Sage meets my gaze with a nod before pulling open a door for concealment. Peeling out of the day's clothes, she begins to dress in layers, just as I instructed her. A camisole first, followed by a woolen sweater and knit stockings. When she's finished, she tugs a white nightshirt over her head to hide it all. I do the same. He's snoring by the time we're dressed. The strap of his bag hangs over the side of Mama's bed, hooked into one of the posts, and a lump forms in my throat when I think about me trying to grab it and him waking up. But I have to go for it. There's no other option. Shoes and coat, I mouth to Sage, pointing to where we keep 'em. Tiptoeing across the room, I reach for the black leather band, attempting to lift it with slow, careful effort, only it's heavier than it looks. Releasing a gentle breath, I try again, the rhythmic snort of his breathing my only reassurance that it's safe to do so. When I glance at Sage, she waves her hands as if she wants me to hurry up. Summoning all my strength, I hoist the bag one last time, so slowly my muscles quaver, and exhale when I free it from the post. Slipping it over my shoulders, I'm almost positive this thing weighs as much as Evie, but I don't have time to think about that. Pointing to the grease kitchen window, I head in that direction, dragging a throw blanket off my bed on the way and placing it over a chair to muffle any sounds should it bump against the wall as we climb out. As soon as everything is in place, I slide the window up and help my sister out, followed by the bag, which I lower to her. It falls onto the ground with a dead thud after slipping through her waiting arms, and my heart ricochets. Turning toward the sleeping stranger, I wait, ensuring he's still snoring before I climb the chair and hoist myself out the window. The cold bites the parts of our flesh left exposed, and only a half moon lights our way. I have to lift you, I whisper. We need to close the window. Slow and quiet, do you understand? We have to keep the cabin warm. One cold draft could pull him out of his slumber, and the second he gets up to shut the window, he'll see that we've fled. Sage bites her bottom lip and nods, and I wrap my arms around her hips, lifting her as high as I can. My muscles shake, barely able to sustain her weight despite her slight size. But within seconds, her willowy fingertips press against the dirty glass, sliding it down without so much as a squeak. Lowering Sage to the cold earth, I regain my balance before slipping the bag over my shoulders and looping my hand in hers. Ready? My voice is whisper soft. My sister nods, and then we run. End of chapter 19.